Welcome to the Sunset Park podcast. I am your host, Rob Aguilar. On today's episode, we're joined by Yu Lin. Yu Lin is candidate for city council in Brooklyn's 38th district. Yu is going to speak to us about why he is running and the issues he feels are most important. But before we get started, I would like to tell you about our sponsor for this episode, and they are Barbone Life. They make natural men's grooming products that are cruelty free and paraben free. When you use the promo code Sunset Park, you get a 10% discount. Now, if you live in zip code 11220, 11232, 11215, and 11209, they will give you free next day delivery. Make sure you check them out over at barbonelife.com. That's BARBONLIFE.com. Now, you, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for having me today.
So, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to get to know more about you. I know that you've been in Sunset Park for a very long time. Where in Sunset Park did you grow up?
Okay. For most of the time, I lived in 8th Avenue, 51st Street. That's where I've been living for in past 15 years. And prior to that, I've been living in a couple locations throughout Sunset Park. I live in 6th Avenue and 10th Avenue, 9th Avenue. So in total, it's 20 years.
20
growing
years.
up in Sunset Park.
Now, so did you move here when you were young? When you were how old more or less were you when you moved here?
When I was 8,
8.
when my father petitioned us to migrate from China to United States, and we lived in Manhattan for 2 months, and then ever since then we've been living in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, up until now.
So 8. Wow, that's a very interesting age, right? You're still a kid. What was your first impression of Sunset Park when you moved here?
Well, it was pretty shocking because we had very high expectation of United States in general when we were back in China. So I have to say there was a bit of it didn't quite meet our expectation for what we were looking for. But at the time, the community was nice. It wasn't as crowded as we are now. It was quite a lot of things to explore. At the same time, there's it's a kind of view that you don't see anywhere in the world. Like you get to see Chinese neighborhood in one block, and then the Spanish Latino just a couple blocks away. And at the time, we still have some Polish population in 8th Avenue, which most of them move away. We don't see them as much right now, nowadays.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because it is a very diverse neighborhood, and something that's still there that I think is there from the old times is the soccer tavern on 8th Avenue, and I think it's 60th and 61st Street. I think it is there.
61st, yes.
61st.
Yes.
And I think that's an old Irish bar that's there. And it's interesting to see because you have a nice group of diverse, interesting people going in and out. And who doesn't love soccer? It's such an international sport.
Exactly.
But so you said it was a little disappointing. What was disappointing about it? And I hear this a lot from people when they come here from other places, my family included, that they expect something else, right? Because when people talk about the United States, when people talk about New York, they believe what they see maybe in the movies. It's very glamorous. It's very cosmopolitan, gigantic skyscrapers, which we do have. They just happen to all be in Manhattan. But they are a little bit disappointed when they come in and they see this.
Yes.
So what did not fit your expectations?
Well, first of all, the street was small. There's not a lot of business out there. You mentioned the tavern on 61st Street, and also, by the way, there's a pizza place, Dominant Pizza, at 8th Avenue, 49th Street. They've been here for a long time too. Um, so at the time, we were expecting to see more of like a Manhattan scenario, even though we do realize that not everywhere has that kind of skyscraper view, but we were expecting more to be more artsy, um, just more to offer. We were expecting more, more surprise, more adventure,
Yeah.
but it didn't offer that.
Yeah. No, definitely. I understand. I understand. So at 8 years old, you've been here ever since. Can you kind of go back in time and kind of think of a memory of Sunset Park that you're fond of, that you can think of and say, "Wow, that was really one of the best memories I had in Sunset Park." Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yes, certainly. The library at Fourth Avenue at the time was my hangout place. It was the only place that offered free computer for kids. At the time, computer was still a delicacy. It was a luxury. Not everybody have one. And I remember as a kid, we would go there and we would sign up for 30 minutes. I don't know if you remember, Rob.
Hmm.
And then we would go on to internet to play some small games like the web page games that you can play for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And that to me, that part did fit my expectation. That
Hmm.
was something that we didn't have back in China or anywhere else in the world.
Very nice. So, and it was also a place where you get to meet new friends, and I'm sure you made a lot of friends in the
Yes,
library as well. And I do remember
definitely.
those games, and I remember sometimes they would get also very competitive
Yes,
among among everyone, and that was always
yeah.
fun.
But
And
time limit was time limit, 30 minutes.
yeah,
That was it.
yeah, yeah. And so it was a great place to socialize with your friends, and
Yeah,
then you would see other kids from other parts of the neighborhood, and it was a great place to make friends. And it is kind of like a local meeting place where people can
yeah.
can hang
Oh,
out and
one
meet
more
up.
thing. Remember, back then we have those videos that you had to rewind them whenever you
Hmm.
want. You borrow them from library, like say Toy Story 1, Toy Story
Uh-huh.
2, and
Yeah.
those were the good times.
Very nice.
Um, yeah.
Very nice.
At the time, it was very good that at the time those things were offered for free,
Hmm.
and at the time it wasn't that available. It wasn't that much around.
Hmm. Hmm.
Technology was really big stuff.
Yeah, and the basically the library became like the internet cafe, so to speak. And
Yeah.
then after that, we started to see internet cafes opening up all over the neighborhood, and there was a few of them also on 8th Avenue. I remember people would go in there, and because
Yeah.
computers were at that time, I guess, expensive. Right now,
Really
they're a lot
expensive.
less expensive. So it was a luxury to have a computer. It was a
Yeah.
luxury to have internet. I remember when we eventually got a computer at home, we were using 56K, if
Yeah.
you remember that. And
That was
then
dial up, right? Using
dial
the
up, yeah,
phone
yeah.
dial.
You'd hear the tone dials, and you'd get the free CDs from AOL, and they'd send them to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going way back.
We didn't have
So
Facebook or anything. AOL was the biggest
the
internet
biggest, yeah.
company. Yeah.
And it's funny because now you can tell who the old people are because they have AOL email still. So
Yeah.
uh,
AOL, Hotmail, even Yahoo is considered pretty old.
yeah, yeah, that's pretty old
Internet
also.
veteran. Yeah.
Yeah. So then how throughout your life, right? You're growing up in Sunset Park and here you are today. What motivated you to run for city council?
Okay, that's a very good question. Um, so in the past, when I was here, there wasn't as many immigrants, both Chinese or Mexican immigrants. Um, in our class, we didn't have a bilingual class, by the way, at the time. I was one of three um, immigrant students who didn't speak the language. So the teachers just have some little small section for us, and we just learn along as we go along. Learn it the hard way. Eventually, you learn it.
Hmm.
Nowadays, they have a bilingual class just for immigrant kids. When they come here, they have the whole package for you, which is really good. I wish I had them when I was little, but I didn't, and I learned the hard way. And
Mhm.
it's what makes me who I am today. Which, and again, it's not a necessarily bad thing to be. So my point is that in the past, the city didn't change at a rate that it is changing today with technology, the population, and even the economic development and everything. Um, so the city has been the same, about the same, I would say, for in the past 50 years or so. Okay, and I'm speaking like before year 2000, the rate of changing was really slow. The city that you know is about the same as the city that your parents grew up, or your grandparents were, relatively the same. Uh, up until now, I mean, the city is changing at an even growing rate. And with the with the current administration, with the current political realm, I think they're not ready for the change. Um, so when I was okay, I own and operate two social adult daycare from scratch. I It was a lot of work, and again, I'm very thankful for this country for the opportunity that offered to me. This is the only country that I could have done it. I operate. I started two social adult daycare. I started a family. I have two kids. Everything happened in just 4 years after I graduated. So this is something only this country can offer me. And in the process, I found out that the city, however, the government was not prepared to offer these things. The opportunity was there, but the city could have done better. So there are things that the city can do less, like do not interfere with the business. The deregulation part, just let people do the business. Stop making a lot of thresholds. A lot of unnecessary bureaucratic stumbling blocks in a way. Like you had to go to this department, that department, filling out this form, waiting for them to reply, and then go to another department. You had to make tons of phone calls. The government could have just simplified everything into a couple of steps or a checklist or something like that. So if you want to do business, just follow the list. Instead, just we had to do everything the hard way. We had to find the information and then comply with it. It was a lot of work, a lot of learning, and a lot of error and trial and error. That was unnecessary. It was waste of time, energy, and our learning capacity. So the thing that really triggered me to run toward this is that
Oh, I think we're having a connection issue on Yu's end. You, can you hear me? Yeah, I think we're going to give him an opportunity to come back. I might have lost the connection with you, but the conversation was flowing really well. He was giving us an idea of what he feels businesses have to go through in order to operate, and we're going to try to bring you back. Okay, so we lost him, but we'll give him a couple of minutes. We're going to reconnect with him really quickly. So I want to remind you, we're going to be back here next Friday, where we're going to bring on another guest. We are doing a series of episodes where we will have the candidates. There is another candidate running who just recently announced, Cesar Zuniga. He is going to be here October 15th. Okay, so you make sure you follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, so that you can be up to date on when that all these interviews that we're going to be having will be on. So he'll be on October 15th at 5 p.m. Make sure you mark that on the calendar. But again, I will post that on the Facebook page. We are going to give you a couple of more minutes. And all right, use back.
yeah,
Great. So you were making some really valid points that where in order to start a business, you are going through all these different processes, and it seems like it's difficult. And it's really discouraging because I've heard this from other small business owners that it almost feels like it's made difficult on purpose. I don't
Yes.
know if that
Yes.
is true, but that is the sense that a lot of
Yeah.
small business owners feel when they're trying to open their businesses, and it's really discouraging. So, this was
Right.
your experience when you were launching your business.
Yeah. It's almost like as if I were to make an allegory, is like a chef making a dish that he doesn't know what it tastes like, and he just take out and to serve people. Like he make a dish, he put in everything, he cook it, and he serve out. And people said it's terrible, and they just have no idea what it tastes like. You know,
Right.
these are the people that never work in a business, they never start a business, and these are the people who are making the laws, who are adding laws, adding regulations to it, telling you you have to do this, you have to do that, and it's terrible. They never tried, they never been in this business field. Okay, and that's one thing. They're interfering with things that they have no experience, and they are neglecting the works that they are supposed to do. For instance, safety. Okay, that's a big thing. Um, from my personal experience and also the experience from people that I know, I can certainly tell you, people feel unsafe nowadays compared to when they were before. In general, I think the crime rate has gone up. People were just insecure. I mean, when I was little, I was allowed to play in the front yard with my neighbors who were at my age. Some of them were Mexican. I remember one of my favorite friends. His name was Marco. We were both immigrants. He didn't speak English, and neither do I. So, but we were able to play,
Nice.
and it was okay. People thought it was safe for kids to play in the street. Nowadays, it's not. Nobody thinks it's safe anymore. Okay, unless you know the person, you know the family, the parents wouldn't allow the kids to go outside and just play. There's a lot of concern. Now that is a big thing. Why is it that we no longer have the security even in our own block? That's something the city should be doing. Providing the security, sanitation, the quality of life, in general has been gone down. So these are the things that government should be working on, that part, which very sadly they've been neglecting, and the parts they shouldn't be interfering, they are. And it's like a chef making a food that they don't eat themselves. They shouldn't be making it in the first place. Okay. And also what I realized that there's a lot of political correctness nowadays. A lot more political correctness than we were, let's say, 20 years ago. Would you agree on that, Rob?
Yeah, so I think some things are a little bit exaggerated, right? Like my take on the whole political correctness is there's a side of me that is very comical. I like to make jokes about many different things,
Hmm.
and we have to be, careful now that we don't, we don't say the wrong thing, right? So I think in that sense there is a little bit too much of it, right?
Hmm.
Like you mentioned about growing up, yeah, there was a time when I played in the street
Yeah.
by myself, with the kids on our block, and it was okay.
Yeah.
And there was no technology, there wasn't anything. I knew it was time to come inside when my mom opened the window and yelled at me, "Hey Rob,
Yeah.
time to get back inside."
Exactly.
Or you
Same
knew
here.
that the light in the street post would come on, you knew it was time
Hmm.
to get back inside. And I think back now, and I have two kids of my own now. I don't know if I would let them out the way my parents used to let me out.
Hmm.
And we'd hang out in front of our house, and that was okay, and there was no concern, right? I mean, I'm sure there's always a concern, but you felt secure that you were going to be okay because you were on the block, and everyone on the block knew you. Everyone kind of looked out for each other's kids, and I think that has been lost, I guess, over time. I don't know why that happens. I don't know if it's a societal change, people, or why we don't no longer feel safe. So I think those are definitely things that we can think about and address. why we no longer feel safe as a community, as a culture, as a society. But those are all great things and points that you bring up. So would you say that in itself was the leading factor in you deciding to run?
Yeah, these are the things that accumulated through the time that I feel like should brought to change to the administration, to the city council, the legislating body, mayorship, the city in general. But what really triggered me to run has to do with COVID-19. Okay, since the outbreak of the COVID in mid March, March 18th, because that was the day that social adult daycare were ordered to shut down, no longer provide services. So I remember that date. Um, there's good and bad. Okay, the bad part, everybody knows the big city is shut down. Businesses were not allowed to open at their full potential. People get hurt really bad. A lot of people die, and that's really sad. A huge loss. But there's also some good thing. And my part is that I was able to spend more time with my family and kids.
Mm.
My son was 2.5 years old at the time, and my daughter was 6 months old. So that was invaluable time that I spent with my family and my kids. At the time, I was able to play with them and read books and just do things that I normally didn't have time to do. And among one of them is reading newspapers, um, just watching news, reading news. And there's something that was very disappointing. We Chinese people, Chinese American, has suffered a lot of bias and racial discrimination because the virus apparently physically came from the region of China. Okay, apparently that was where it's from. That's according to science. There's no. It is what it is. However, certain things that happened here was very disappointing. Okay, when we put on mask at the time, we were being attacked. We were being abused in many ways, physically, verbally. A lot of Chinese people even give out free masks to people. It was free. It was doing something nice for the community, and even that, we didn't receive a lot of good response. Uh, so that was terrible. So at the time, I was quite angry about it. So I thought, why isn't these elected officials do something about it? We have a lot of Chinese population, especially in this neighborhood. Okay, we have about 100,000 Chinese population in this neighborhood. So why don't they care about it? Um, and then I do some research. I realize that we have very low voting rate. Even though we have 100,000, the voting rate is about 700 to 800 votes.
Wow.
That was probably why they didn't care. Just like the merchants were cared about making profits, it's very sad that elected official is more or less about the votes, basically. They were after the votes. Whatever gets them vote, they cared about it. If there's no vote, they wouldn't even budge. And another thing is that isn't any Chinese candidate running. It's not about being elected or not. That's a side story. But we had to come out. We had to run. Our voice needs to be expressed. And at the time, actually, I read about Winnie Hu, who actually is Chinese American descent. She was running. I was I would have support her if I wasn't running, just because she's Chinese. But then as I get to know more about her from her own stories in the articles, I realized that she's not my candidate, and here's why. Even though she's running as a Chinese American, she doesn't even speak Chinese. She doesn't even speak our language, so that was disappointing. But that was okay. What was disappointing was that she didn't mention anything about the discrimination that we went through, which was baked in and apparent. It's something everybody experiences every day. And even nowadays, the Trump administration is pushing to ban TikTok and WeChat, two of the very prominent, prevailing social app that many Chinese American Chinese communities use. And for a lot of people, it's a crucial part for their business. they do business with these social apps. I understand that they have to do whatever they do with the country of China, the Communist Party. That I have no problem with that. But when you do that, you have to realize that there are Chinese Americans here. We are Americans. When we do business, we pay tax. We are supporting this country. We are functioning members of this society, of this nation. They have to consider about us. We need to be considered. And it's really disappointing when a candidates like Whitney who has a Chinese background, doesn't even speak our language, and doesn't even care or mention about our things. That was very disappointing. So I thought, instead of waiting for somebody else to show up, why don't I just do it?
Very nice. So, would you say that? And you mentioned the Trump administration, but I would say that, and you tell me if you agree with this or not. But he kind of helped flame this fear and this discrimination, I think, that the Asian American communities were feeling because of the coronavirus. Um, I put blame on him. Would you agree that he deserves blame a lot for this discrimination, and not just against Asian Americans? I think
Yeah,
that his whole philosophy on immigrants is not what this country should stand for. This is a country of immigrants that was built by immigrants. If we look at the history of this country, our city, New York City, was built
right.
on immigrants. Every major city in this country that is thriving thrives because immigrants build it, and immigrants continue to be an important part of the development, an important part of the economy, an important part of the fabric of these cities that make this country great. And his rhetoric and the way he speaks, and I remember a few different press conferences where he was asked, where they were talking daily about coronavirus, and the way he would describe coronavirus and the way he would refer to China was insulting,
Yeah,
insulting for me. And I'm not Chinese. I was just insulted to hear him speak the way he spoke about that. And then I think when you have someone in that position
mm,
speaking this way irresponsibly, then there's people that are going to react negatively towards the groups that he's directing. So do you think he is part of the blame for this climate?
yeah. I would agree with you, Rob. To be blunt with you, I don't like President Trump and his ideas. But I'm a fair guy. Okay, he did some certain things good for this country. I do believe he has a heart for this country. But as his philosophy is concerned, I I disagree with most of his philosophies. I would say 90% of his philosophy I found them to be erroneous, um, just not true. It's against science, and he doesn't like immigrants, even though he himself is the grandson of an immigrant. His family was from Germany. He is a descendant of German immigrant. So everybody here is either immigrant or children of immigrant. It's a scientific fact.
Yeah,
It's a
his
historical
wife
fact.
is an immigrant, and two out of his three
Exactly.
wives were immigrants. So it's a comedy. Like, you can't make this up. It's almost comedic the way he behaves and the way he carries on. And so, are you running on which party are you running with? Are you running as a Democrat, as a Republican, as an independent? What party are you with, or would you affiliate yourself with?
Democrat, but I would affiliate myself as a Dino. Democrat in name only.
Okay, tell me about that. Why?
Okay. Okay. Technically speaking, this part of the community has been historically Democrat. In primary, I mean in general election, Democrat usually gets like landsliding votes, 80 to 90%. So you can't go against that. As a first time candidate, I just take what I have to do. I'll be a Democrat. But the reason why I said I'm Dino, I don't really associate with the party that much because to be honest with you, I think both of the parties to two main parties, Democrat and Republican, they are about equally racist to us, Chinese people in general, just in different aspects. So if you're racist, if they're both racist to me, why should I pay my loyalty to them? You know? But
Right.
when it comes to technical issues, like, it's either with one party or independent, I have to make the right choice,
Okay.
technical choice.
Now, you mentioned a few things about running and why you're running, and let's talk a little bit now about the issues that you would like to handle
Mhm,
um, should you become our next council member. And you, from what I get, most of what you're saying is that you feel that the Asian community has been neglected for a very long time and that they
yeah.
haven't had the right representation. Um, but if you were to become elected, do you think that aside from being the voice of the Asian community that needs a voice in City Hall, do you feel that you can also represent the rest of the community where you have people from all over different parts of the world,
Mhm.
mainly Latin America? Could you see yourself being the candidate or the council member for the entire district? Is that
Of
something
course.
that you feel you can take on?
Okay. Rob, first of all, I would like to clarify. I'm not just voicing for the Chinese community or the Asian community. Um, Actually, I feel like as an Asian, as a Chinese, I know that there's a lot we can offer to the city. Not just that we want to be heard, we need to be taken care of. Actually, if you just look at it, we've been doing pretty good in general, the Chinese community. And I feel like not having us represented, not having us contribute, having the opportunity to contribute our part is a loss for the whole society. There's a lot of things that we can offer, a lot of things that we can do to build the society, to make it a better place for everyone, everywhere. So again, my heart is for the entire district, even the entire city, not just any specific group.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the issues that seem to be at the forefront of the neighborhood, right? Like you can't talk about Sunset Park without talking about gentrification, and you'll hear
Right.
me mention gentrification a lot in a lot of the episodes because it's such a hot topic, right? We have a
Mhm,
lot of developers who see Sunset Park as strategically where it's located a good
mhm,
investment, right? Because you are close to Manhattan. We have a Fourth Avenue express line that gets you into
mhm.
Manhattan in 20 minutes. You go from 36th Street or 59th Street, and four stops you're in Manhattan. Five
Absolutely.
stops you're in Midtown. So it's a great place because of how close
Absolutely.
you are to Manhattan. So developers are super attracted to Sunset Park, and gentrification is a big issue that people are concerned about, and we hear about it in the news. There was just
Mhm,
this big win where community people from Sunset Park were demonstrating against the rezoning of Industry City, right? So
mhm.
what is your view on gentrification? Is that something that we need to slow down, to stop, or do we just let it be?
Um, Before answering this question, I would like to give you the full disclosure. I do not have any background or interest related connected with real estate development, and my family or the me or directly related family members of mine, we're not planning to go into that field uh, to to be part of the field to do any business like that. So whatever happened, we're not gonna make any money out of it. That's full disclosure, okay? When it comes to gentrification, the word has a bad connotation, but I take it as a neutral word. It's developing the community. Um, so industrial city, it was previously industrial. It was factories and manufacturing units, and now because we shift out those work, and those places have been left empty and unused. And like you said, it's a golden place is a golden place for development, for its proximity to Manhattan, even to Staten Island, even to New Jersey is not that far away. There's a lot of things that we can put our imagination in. There's a lot of things we can certainly do. The worry from some of the so-called grassroots residents, now the logic behind it is that if the place get developed, it will be gentrified. Somehow they will lose money, and I think it's just illogical because in order for let's put it this way, those places were not owned by these grassroots, right, Rob?
No, they weren't.
No, exactly. They don't own it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the grassroots. They would be property owners. They would be considered pretty rich. One of those any property are in millions or tens of millions. So they don't own the property. Whatever happens to the property, there is no loss to them, right? Does it make sense? There is no loss. I mean, I don't own any property in that area, so whatever happens to that, there is no loss to me. And put it this way, if they develop the place, first of all, it creates more jobs. They will be able to hire more people. And once the place is built, they will be able to have to draw more merchant into it. And again, it creates more jobs, more tourist attraction from the citywide, even worldwide. Um, there will be more revenue collected from the property tax because the property value goes up as we develop the place. And with these funds that we collect from tax revenue, we can use it to pay welfare. I mean, I have a heart for poor people, but where's the money going to come from? Having a heart is good, but you need money for them. Where are you going to get the money for the poor people? Somebody has to make money for them. Uh, somebody has to create jobs for them. You know, no, I understand people think that creating is benefiting. If you let them develop, it's benefiting the rich people. But why can't they be developed? This is our country is a country that we encourage people to pursue their dreams, to work hard and make a fortune. This has been the philosophy of this nation. We encourage people to work hard. We encourage people to be successful, to be rich, as long as it's legitimate. Apple is a company that has a stock value of maybe 1.5 trillion.
Hmm.
It's fine because they created even more values to the society. Just look at the amount of work that we can do, the values that we can make from the iPhone, from these fabulous laptops that they make. Even though they're pretty expensive, but it's worth it. Actually, we made more value out of it. I don't have any problem with Apple company making trillions of dollars, even though I don't own a single stock from them. You know,
Mm.
it's okay. It's okay for them to be successful.
Yeah, I think the concern from the people who were against the rezoning of Industry City was that when that type of development, and they were using examples of, like, for example, let's say Chelsea Market
Hmm.
in Manhattan, Williamsburg, the meatpacking district in Manhattan as well. It was the same group, right? Jamestown Properties. And what happened there was that eventually the small business owners that are there now were essentially squeezed out by these bigger
Hmm.
companies. So they feel that, like, the mom and pop shops get squeezed out because their rent will increase because, let's say, the property owner now sees that there's this new giant developer coming in.
Hmm.
They're they cause the rents to increase, and that was one of the biggest arguments during that whole movement that was against the rezoning, that the regular folks who are maybe small business owners or regular folks who are living in an apartment, that their rents will then increase to an
Hmm.
amount that they can no longer afford, right? Or if they had the dream to maybe buying a house, the house now is millions of dollars, that even if they have a good job. And I heard a lot of testimonials during the whole process where there was a gentleman who was saying, I make about $110,000. He goes, my wife makes around the same, and we still can't afford to buy a house in Sunset Park. So those were the, I guess, the arguments and the points that they were trying to make when
Mhm.
they were saying that what Industry City was trying to do was to change the rezoning laws so that they could bring in luxury hotels, luxury retail, where regular folks would
Mhm.
not be able to go there and shop or go there and eat because the prices were too
Mhm.
high. So it was a very touchy
Mhm.
subject that I think, noticing that the community had, there was people on both sides of the argument, it completely divided the community because there was those people that said I don't
Mhm.
want it, and there was people that are like we got to have it because it's now it's nice
Mhm.
that we have all these things there. And so that was like, I think, the biggest argument that it would increase the cost of living here. And then where do you go from here? Like, I think the
Mhm.
affordable neighborhoods in the city are less and less, and then people end up moving outside of New York just because it's so high.
Mhm.
So I think that was one of the biggest arguments. I don't know what you think about that, or
Mhm.
uh, if
Okay.
you have any thoughts.
Um, I'm 100% for the mom and pop shop and the regular guys. I myself I'm just a regular guy. Okay. I'm looking to buy a house for my family as well in the future. Let's say 5 to 10 years. Just like most most of the middle class. Um, but when it comes to the technicality of development, okay, there's two questions, and oftentimes we're mixing them. We had to we have to be logical and view it as two different things. So development is about creating the wealth creation. What you mentioned about mom and pop shops, regular people buying house, that's about wealth distribution. So these are two different topics: wealth creation and wealth distribution. How do we distribute it in a fair way? So everybody gets a share. The rich people get their share. Everybody else get their fair share. Workers get paid fairly, and the wage that they get paid should be able to sustain their family and saved up, and even buy a house for themselves in the neighborhood. I think that's something that we should uh, work as a principle. That's the underlying principle. The exact number, has to be calculated by mathematician and economist, but that's the guiding principle. Whatever money that they make should be able to sustain the family and buy a house in a neighborhood.
Yes. Now, another issue, if we can move along, is, and you mentioned this before, right? That there seems to be a level of people not feeling secure in the neighborhood. And that brings into play our local 72nd precinct,
Mhm.
where historically, for some reason, there's always been incidents of police brutality at the hands of local officers from the 72nd precinct. And then now, with people being able to record the police, we see all these different videos from all over the country. And then, of course, the tragic death and murder of Mr. George Floyd. That created a national movement of defund the police, where people also here in New York locally believe in that movement, that
Mhm.
we should be able to hold police officers accountable. And what do you feel about that, about defund the police? What do you think, or what comes to mind when you hear defund the police and incidents of police brutality?
Mhm. Okay, so this is a very complicated uh, issue that there's a lot of conflicting ideas going on. Um, First of all, we have to admit that there are bad apples in the police force, unfortunately. Unlike their slogan that says respect, professionalism, and courtesy, a lot of times I don't see them acting to that standard. It's a very nice slogan, by the way. I really like it. But there are bad apples in the police force. That is one thing. So regardless of if Mr. George Floyd incident happened, I would and trimming off some bad branches and throwing out the bad apples. But defeating the whole purpose. You know what I mean? We need to pick out the bad apple, because after all, I mean, if we get rid of police, who's gonna protect us, like our kids, our family, and everybody? Um, so we have to be fair. You know, when we handle these things, we just have to be fair. We give them credit for whatever they do, and I don't want to use the word punishment because that has a is a very strong word. We had to take necessary measurements, countermeasurements, you know, checks and balance. Okay, we had to constantly check on the system and balance it whenever necessary. So defunding the police, and again, there are certain fats in the system that should be trimmed off. But again, there are certain places that I think it's even underfunded. I
Yeah, like
think, yeah, it's really hard to say, you know, which part. And I've never been a police myself, and I have friends who are police, who are police officers, and you know, they're very honest with me. They said there are fats in the system. Um, you know, that is, I don't want to mention his name, but he did say that for a certain position, you know, people are being paid to basically not doing much work. Those parts should be trimmed off. Um, but for certain other parts, they actually need to be reinforced.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of overspending when it comes to police, and I think that is one of the big
Yeah,
points, right? When the defund the police people meant, because I've asked a few of them, like, what do you mean by defunding the police, right? Because it sounds harsh, it sounds bad when you hear defund the police.
yeah,
So what I was able to gather from research is that it doesn't necessarily mean get rid of the police department as a whole, although some people do believe that and that you need to restructure all over again. But one key thing, statistic that stuck out to me, because the city council not so long ago voted on the budget,
hmm,
where the budget for the police department used to be last year $6 billion, right? And to me, that's an astronomical amount
yeah,
when you factor that schools, hospitals, healthcare, and other human uh, resources and needs don't get that combined. So if we were to combine schools, Department of Education, hospitals, and mental health issues and health insurance, and we would put those all together, the money that they get from taxes doesn't equal anything close to
hmm,
$6 billion.
no,
And I find that money, those taxes are not distributed that well. I mean, COVID exposed how in dire need our hospitals are of different equipment.
hmm,
So I agree with the point that you were saying. We do need to kind of revisit that and see where the money is being badly
yeah,
spent,
yeah,
because it is happening. And I think if you do that, I mean, who wouldn't want to have great schools, right?
hmm,
I think it's important to have. You need obviously people to uphold the laws and have officers to keep people safe, but we need good schools too. We
hmm,
need we need great hospitals,
of
right?
course.
Where people can go and get help if they're sick, and that COVID, I think, is going to be around for a while, where people can go there and get the proper care that they need. And it's up to city council members to vote on the budget and vote responsibly. So if you were to become our next council member, you're going to have a very big responsibility in that, and representing the community the right way. But
Hmm.
talking about all this, right? If you were to pick an issue that you think is one of the most important issues that you want to take on, when if you were to become our next council member, what issue comes to mind when you're like, you know what, when I get in there, this is what I want to take on?
Okay. Um, because from my business and entrepreneurial experience, I like to do things efficiently. Okay, less input, big results. So, for instance, the security part, bringing back the safety. Okay, um, how are we going to do it? And one thing that I think that we should do and we can do is to bring back the death penalty for New York City. So if I were to be voted to be elected as the city councilman, I would push to establish a committee for capital punishment. Now, I do not hope to put anyone into capital punishment. That's not my point. The reason why to establish a rule, bring back that penalty, is to protect people. If you don't intend to do bad, you don't have to be afraid about it. It's here to protect you. It's to make uh, the bad guys, before they do bad things, they they can have a second thought. Do you really want to do this? You know, we're serious. Um, I mean, if you look at the presidential debate a couple of days ago, a lot of people watch it. Some people think it's a joke. Some people laugh, think it's a comedy show. I was a little bit sad, being like someone who's running for a political position, because now people don't have respect for the government anymore. Anarchists, they will do whatever they want. They feel like we can do anything we want as long as we have power, we have people, we can do whatever we want. But that's not right. Even though this country is free, other people can be free, if you know what I mean. Okay, I have two kids myself. I pay myself for them to be comfortable. If I exercise my freedom to full extent, my wife and kids will not be comfortable. As a father, as a husband, I need to exercise my um, restriction on myself, self-restriction. And likewise, I think we need to bring that penalty back. So for big things, for murderers, uh, rapists, especially child rapists, um, human trafficking, all these big ones. Okay, I don't have any problems executing, signing the capital punishment for them. And if that were to happen, I will take full responsibility for the family. Okay, let's say if the man is deemed guilty for death penalty by the judge, and I sign it to be in effect, I will be personally, if not legally, responsible for the family, the children, okay, the old parents. I'll take care of them. You know, I don't have any bad conscience about it. If I have to do it, I'll do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want I don't want anybody to get hurt. Definitely. Yeah.
What do you would you fear that someone who might have been wrongly accused and wrongly convicted uh, and then sentenced to the death penalty? Because
Yeah.
my fear with the death penalty is that, right,
Yeah.
that we've seen cases where they got the wrong guy and someone pointed him out, and the prosecution was able to build a case, and this person maybe looked like the person they were accusing, and then wrongly convicted, and they spent 20 years, and then they finally find out, oh, this wasn't the right guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if
That's
something like
terrible.
if something like capital punishment existed, would you not fear that they might get the wrong guy?
I do.
And
I do.
how do we then alleviate so that that doesn't happen, right? Because
Right.
that would be a heavyweight for anyone to have to carry,
Right.
that the wrong guy was executed
Right.
and he wasn't it.
Right. So to bring back that penalty doesn't mean I will use it freely. Actually, I will be using it with the full to the extremist restriction. I will not use it as long as there is any doubt in the case. I will exercise the fullest restriction not to carry it through, because just like I mentioned, I'm going to take responsibility for the family, the children, the parents. How am I going to explain to them that your son, your father was executed because we had to do it, you know? So I don't want to do it. It's not my point to kill people. I'm pacifist, I'm Christian. But to bring it back, it's about, to establish the seriousness in the city, even the atmosphere, to change the atmosphere. We're here, we're not the same. We're not your typical politicians who just go to meetings, shake hands, take pictures, and go back to office and do nothing. We're serious about it. We're serious about your doing. We're safety. We're serious about your well-being, your security, your safety, economic development. We exercise restriction. We do a lot of work. We make sure every case, when there's no doubt, or at least that's possible, in order to take those hard decisions. And it's not just in death penalty, in everything. We had to dig through and do it right. Just like I just mentioned before with the development thing. Wealth creation is not necessarily equal to wealth distribution. It's two different things. You can't just put it into one question and say yes or no. Am I for development? Yes, but also I'm also for fair distribution of wealth. Everybody should get a share, not just the rich people.
Yeah, I think that's one of the issues that the community or the people feel, that all I guess everyone wants is a fair opportunity. And we go back
Yes,
to what we were talking about before, where here you are trying to open a business, and this happens to a lot of people, and it's just extremely difficult. And they make you
very
do all these
difficult.
different things where it's discouraging. Like, all I want to
Yeah,
do is a fair opportunity to open my business so that I can provide for my family, so that I can pay my taxes, and maybe as a small business owner, create local jobs. But this is definitely an
yeah,
interesting conversation, and we got ahead before when you mentioned about candidates, right? Because my final question, and I ask every single one of the candidates that have been on, is if you weren't running, right, who of the other candidates would you support? And in the previous
I
conversation we
did
were
say
having
Whitney.
before,
Yeah,
you kind of said maybe Whitney, but then you took Whitney out of contention. So there's a few others, and I don't know if you're familiar with them, but if Yu Lin was not running,
mhm.
and he's like, I got to back up a candidate that I feel is going to be fair to represent the district, who would you vote for?
Okay. I will vote for the most distinguished one. Okay. Um, so the other three, Alexa Avidas, Cesar Zuniga, and the last gentleman, his last name was Camarino. I forgot his first name. I'm sorry.
Rodrigo Camareño.
Yes, yes, Camarino. That's him. So these three, they have relatively similar background. Like if I choose one between them, and again, it's not because of their racial things like that. I mean, these are the people who have been in the political realm for some times. Okay, like these are I'll call the establishment. These are the people that you will see when you go to community board meetings, all kinds of meetings, the same group of people. They've been there 5, 10 years, 15 years. And I just get tired of them. I mean, if they do want to do something for the community, they could have done it in the past 5 years, in past 10 years. If they didn't do it in the past, why should I believe that they can do something for us in the future?
Mhm.
And that's just being fair. And Whitney being the youngest among the four, now I'm the youngest if you count me. Now since I'm out of the picture, Whitney is the youngest. I would choose her because even though a lot of things that she said does not satisfy me, is not that satisfying, but simply being a young person who's not part of the establishment, I think that is something that I will be excited to, something to look forward to. There's a good possibility that she can learn and do something good for the community. As for the other three, they've been here for so many years. If they didn't do anything in the past, I don't think they can do anything for us in the future. And again, I don't have anything personally held against them. That's just my take on their experience. I just want to see new blood, new ideas, with new technology, with great learning potential and great learning capital, the time, energy. These are the things that, once people get elected, they don't become a know-all. They had to learn. Even though a city councilman gets elected, it's nice, but a lot of things you had to learn. It's about how much you can learn. It's not about how much you know, how much experience you have um, in the past. Because experience from the past may not work today. You know what I mean? 100
Mm.
years ago, father, son, grandson, they can have the same job. They work in the same restaurant. But nowadays, it doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
The, the age is changing at an ever growing rate. Like I was born in 1991, okay, um, in the 90s, and then I realized that people who were born after 95 are different from me. We have generation gap, and people after 2000 is like another generation, and people born after 2010 is a whole different species. They stopped playing
Yeah.
iPads when they were 3.
Right. They're practically born with an iPad in their hands.
Yeah, yeah.
So, this was a great conversation. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk about your vision, what you believe in, and if people want to get to know more about you, do you have a website that people can visit? If they want to get in touch with you, or if they have more questions about your campaign,
Hmm.
where can people reach you?
Okay. Site Vote Yu Lin 2021 is we just had it developed, and we will be putting out materials soon in Chinese, Spanish, and English, all 3 languages. All content will be trilingual, and also you can also email me at voteyulin2021 at gmail.com.
Okay,
And
great.
I always look into email and reply to them. You know
Great.
that, Rob.
Yes, I do. I do. So we will post that in the notes of the episode. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. It was very interesting to get to know more about you. As we get closer to the election, I'd love to have you back and see how things are going and see how the campaign is moving along.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to having you again.
Thank you, Rob. I'm looking forward to come back.
Great. So I want you to make sure you give us a follow on Facebook, on Instagram, on
Mhm.
Twitter. We are going to have the other candidates. Actually, there's one more candidate, Cesar Zuniga. He's going to be on October 15th at 5 p.m. Make sure you give us a follow so that you could tune into that conversation. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Take care.